Hi, this is Dr. Mallory coming to you from Greater Things. I hope you all are staying healthy by doing your physical distancing and staying socially healthy by connecting socially in a safe way. Today I wanted to talk with you about how to mentally survive COVID-19. And I'm going to bring to you some research-based strategies that are going to help you cope with this, because after the physical threat has passed, I want you to still be emotionally, psychologically well. What we're going to talk about today are tips and coping strategies that come from past lessons, things we've learned from other crises, other pandemics that we have faced, and what the research has shown in terms of what we can do to stay mentally strong and what to avoid so that we don't increase our vulnerability. The first tip is to limit your use of social media. So based on the findings from the Zika virus in 2016, researchers found that individuals who garnered a lot of information from social media actually experienced an increase in perception of risk. So what does that mean exactly? Well, that means that as we are all going around attached to our devices and getting notifications from your Twitter feed or from your Instagram or signing on to Facebook or whatever social platform that you use, those messages are coming in constantly because the news outlets and individuals who are sharing what they've heard or what they've known just keep coming and coming and coming. What that does to your brain is it sends off signals that I am in danger, I am in danger, I am in danger. Prepare, prepare, prepare. So your amygdala, your emotion center of your brain, your fight, or freeze survival mechanism is on constant alert. It's very hypervigilant. That hypervigilance is sending all kinds of stress hormones through your body, which is causing your body to react as though it were in danger. Those body reactions, heart rate, muscles, etc., send messages then back to that part of your brain that says, we are in danger. So your brain says, all right, my body says I'm in danger, I must be in danger, and I'm getting all of these messages that tell me there's danger, so it kicks into overdrive. The downside, as if that isn't enough of a downside, is that overall what this does, keeping ourselves in that constant state of stress, is it actually lowers our immune system and it makes us less able to fight back any kind of viruses or any kind of illnesses that we might come in contact with. The exact opposite of what we want to be doing right now. Also looking at the Zika virus 2016 findings, what researchers discovered is that individuals who engaged in gathering their information from traditional news sources. So this would be things like your local television station, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, wherever you typically would gather your news, that individuals who got their news from those sources actually increase their engagement in protective behaviors. So protective behaviors are things that are designed to help keep you safe. You're taking the measures that make sense based on the data from the news sources, the facts, versus the drama that's coming across from social media. So social media, you have an increased perception of danger even though your danger level has not necessarily increased, whereas listening to traditional news sources increases your ability to take effective action. The second thing that I want to share with you is how important it is to limit your exposure to media coverage. So even if you are choosing to get your information from traditional news sources, it is still important that you limit the amount of time that you spend listening or watching these. So if we look at the findings from the Boston Marathon bombings in 2013, what the research showed us is that people with the highest exposure to media coverage had higher levels of acute stress than those who were directly exposed to the bombings. What this means is that the people who were there and experienced the bombings experienced a one-time incident and those levels of acute stress went away, versus those of us who maybe stayed at home and read story after story on Facebook and listened to the news over and over and over again. That continued exposure results in what we call vicarious traumatization. Vicarious traumatization is exactly that. You weren't actually in that life-threatening situation, and yet hearing about it has caused that same trauma response to happen for you. It is very interesting that those who were exposed to those higher levels of traditional TV news experienced higher stress than the people who actually in life-threatening situation of the bombings. So definitely limit the amount of time that you spend listening to traditional news sources. My recommendation is check in the morning, check in the evening. If you absolutely have to, fine, check in midday. After that, turn off the television, turn off the radio, turn off your notifications on social media, which we shouldn't be getting our information from anyway. And do choose trusted news sources. Certainly the CDC and the World Health Organization's websites are going to have the most accurate, up-to-date, factual information for you. Additionally, in terms of limiting your time exposure to media coverage, we can look at what happened in Africa in 2014 with the Ebola crisis there. And what they found from that is that people who had experienced more distress during past disasters may become more at risk for negative psychological outcomes during the current pandemic. So what this is getting at is it's getting at our ability to bounce back and be resilient. And so the more traumas that we've been exposed to, the less resilient we are likely to be. I saw this a lot with the military. We had our military folks who deployed time after time after time again, each time seemingly coming back and being okay with the amount of stress that they'd been exposed to. However, after 6 or 7 deployments, there's no magic number, but after a certain number of deployments, they would come back home and all of a sudden, all of this distress would start hitting them, which would catch them by surprise because they were trained for those sorts of deployments. They were trained to face that kind of stress. But even our top-notch guys and women do have a certain level of resiliency that can dip down and make us more vulnerable. So if you've already been exposed to past disasters, consider yourself a little bit more at risk each time a new disaster comes. Right along with that is we want to manage our stress. The important piece here is that we want to notice what is going on with us. We don't want to ignore those little signs, those little symptoms that are popping up for us. Because ignoring acute stress from traumatic events is correlated with poor overall general health. It's associated with increased pain. We have more disability and higher rates of mortality. Ignoring acute stress from traumatic events also increases our anxiety, our depression, other psychiatric disorders, and it also increases family conflict. So we want to keep a really close eye on what's going on. Consider your stress response and what's going on with you emotionally as the same thing as your gas gauge on your car, right? So every once in a while you do want to look at your gas gauge. Where am I? Is my needle all the way at full? Am I at halfway? Am I hovering down near a quarter? Each one of those gives us information about what action to take or not take. Certainly once you get down to the quarter of a tank, that's probably your signal, I need to start looking for a gas station. It would be wise of me to go fill up. Now if we ignore that for whatever reason, the inconvenience, the cost, just the hassle factor of touching the gas pump, whatever it is, if we ignore that, then that needle doesn't change. It doesn't care that we don't like that it's at a quarter of the tank. It's going to keep dropping down. Now eventually what happens is that little gas light comes on, and you get the big beep that tells you, warning, take effective action. If you don't take effective action, you end up in a bigger mess. Side of the road, no gas. We are the same way. We need to pay attention to our bodies, to our signals that we are starting to experience stress. The sooner that you notice that, you can take effective action, and that action will have a bigger impact than if you waited all the way until you were almost at a breakdown. So things to look for is feelings of anxiety, feelings of sadness or hopelessness, or starting to feel helpless about the situation. Increased conflict with the people that we love and we care about, which is very likely to happen right now because not only are we in this stress situation that is unpredictable, it's uncertain, the amount of time that it will take is uncertain, but we're also being quarantined. And that means that our usual strategies for stress management have been taken away or severely limited. Inability to go to the gym, can't go to the golf course, can't go to the tennis court. We can't take our kids out to the playground or to the pool, or we can't go to the movies, we can't go to our social hours. These things that normally help us manage our stress and put fun in our life have been severely hampered, if not taken away altogether, for this short period of time. That means we are not able to manage our stress or deal with our stress in our usual ways, and we're in this area of confinement with people that we love. No matter how much you love somebody, that situation is ripe for conflict. So we really want to keep an eye on that, because we want to be kind to each other. We don't want to take out the stress on the people that we love the most. Speaking of people we love the most, find some social support. The quarantines and the isolation, what we've seen from research across the board, is that those two things are associated with negative psychological effects, including the more extensive negative psychological effects of post-traumatic symptoms, anger, and sometimes confusion. We want to ward those off. How can you find social support? Well, we can decrease those negative psychological effects by, first and foremost, if you have children, establishing clear communication between you and your children. As much as our lives have been turned upside down by this, our children's lives have been also. They, however, don't have the capacity to fully understand what's going on right now. Heck, we're struggling to fully understand the extent of everything that's going on and how long it's going to last. So imagine yourself being a young child. If you have not already, on our Facebook page, Sheva Gantz has a 2-part series on how to speak to your children about the virus. It's very well done and loaded with some fabulous information. It's a 2-part series. Part 1 is about how to talk to your kids about the virus, and Part 2 is how to equip your children with coping strategies. Very important information. I highly encourage that. As parents, if we can communicate clearly with our children about what's going on, what to expect, that provides them that sense of comfort and security that they desperately need during these times. Web-based educational videos. There is so much going on out there. It's so wonderful to see a lot of the higher education establishments coming out and offering some of their courses for free online. There's a lot of other things. If you just do some Googling, a lot of great educational videos that are out there that can help you help your children. I know parenting right now is now involving working from home as a parent as well as homeschooling. That's a lot of challenge right there without those outlets that we talked about. So use the web for some of those videos that can help relieve some of the pressure off of you and also provide education and entertainment for those young ones. Virtual tours of museums and state and national parks. This is a fabulous thing that is being offered up to everybody right now, and that is these museums and national parks and state parks are offering free virtual tours. So some interesting, fun ways to find some social support. Send out a text message to everybody, say, hey, you know what, let's get together online and let's plan our virtual vacation. You can do a virtual vacation across the United States, hitting all the national and state parks. You can go to Europe and hit all of the museums that are there. But plan something out, and maybe a couple of times a week on Monday and Wednesday you go and you do your little virtual road trip and you stop in at the canyons or you stop in at the Louvre, whatever it is. So that pulls us into the online interactions with family and friends. You can get very creative with doing this. Like I said, you can do the virtual vacations, you can do virtual movie night where everybody logs on to their Skype or their FaceTime or their Zoom or their VC or whatever platform they use. Everybody decide, here's the movie we're going to watch. Go pop your popcorn, turn on your computer so you got the FaceTime there, and you're watching that same movie virtually. Really awesome right now. A lot of the movie theaters, movies that were made for movie theaters are being released for direct pay. They're being released on Netflix for a pay-per-view so that you can watch the latest movies that you were looking forward to. And actually it's a little bit cheaper. There's a nice little perk because you can do your popcorn and your candy right there at home, and it's saving you the money from concessions. I also encourage you to check out your online church services. Most churches now are doing some kind of live streaming for their church services. If church has been a part of your everyday life, this is a must. You need to nurture that spiritual pillar of wellness right now. You need to feel that sense of connection that you get from your church group. So I'd encourage you, as you're doing your online church services, get up, get dressed, put on your church clothes, and to make it really fun, go ahead and have brunch afterwards, since that is very much a tradition for a lot of people to go to brunch after church. If church has not been part of your regular life, I do encourage you to check some sort of spirituality out so that you can get that sense of connection and that sense of peace that comes from having a higher power. Finally, your online psychological services by mental health providers. If you are currently in therapy, reach out to your therapist if you have not already and ask if they provide phone or virtual sessions. I think everybody in the mental health field has moved this direction, because we understand that while the physical issues are going to pass, these emotional side effects of what we're going through right now could last a very long time, and we want to make sure that we curtail any of those negative side effects for those who are already vulnerable to experiencing more acute stress from what we're dealing with at this moment. If you are not currently engaged in mental health services, in a therapy relationship, and you begin to notice some signs of distress, that might include feelings of being on edge, it might include difficulty sleeping or having nightmares, it might include feelings of hopelessness, sadness, helplessness, it might include increased family conflict. So if you're noticing some of these things that are different from how you normally are, reach out to a mental health provider, see if you can get something scheduled just to kind of boost you back up to where you normally operate. There's some great ways to locate a qualified mental health professional. You can certainly go on Psychology Today. You can look at, if you're using your health insurance, you can definitely look at providers that are listed on your health insurance panel. And then I do recommend that you look online and check out their reviews and give them a call. The relationship and feeling comfortable with your mental health professional is a very important key to getting better. So the bottom line in all of this is based on findings from past crises. So this is empirical data. This is real stuff. First of all, stay informed by authoritative sources. So limit that social media. Reach out to news sources that you trust. As I said, I really like my local TV news, and I like the CDC and the World Health Organization websites. That gives me the information and the facts that I need about what's really going on, without a lot of the drama that can get stirred up in other news outlets. Limit the amount of time that you are immersed in the news. As I said, do a morning check-in, an evening check-in, maybe a midday check-in if you absolutely have to, and then turn the news off. It's important to manage your stress during and after the crisis. So pay attention to what's going on, right? How am I feeling? Are there any changes that are happening in terms of my sleep, my eating, my mood? And also after the crisis, this is an important part. Many of us do very well through the crisis. We move into a mode of self-care, taking care of others. We stay in the moment. We don't project too far into the future. But oftentimes it can be after the crisis passes and things calm down that we realize exactly what we experienced and what we went through, that the emotional consequences can start to impact us. So if that happens after all of this has passed, please reach out, get some mental help as soon as possible. The sooner you get help, the less impact it will have on your relationships and on your life overall. And finally, be creative in finding that social support. There's a lot of really fun ways that you can do this. I really encourage you to reach out to others, go online, see what other people are doing. This can be a great time for bonding and for connecting in new ways that I hope will last. Remember that as we move into adulthood, our creativity scores, if you watch my Pillar of Wellness on creativity, I talked about how our creativity scores when we are 5, we score 98%, and by adulthood, we've plummeted all the way down to 2%. So that prefrontal medial cortex part of your brain that helps us to be creative has gotten constricted. This is a great time to grow new neural pathways, create new neurons in your brain, and as we get more creative, we actually become more adaptable, which means in future crises, we'll be better able to cope and manage with those. I hope that everybody took something important away from this. My job is to make sure that you feel connected, that you have accurate information in how you can take the best care of you holistically. As I always say, I want you to be kind to you, be kind to others, and keep on doing greater things.